2. And we'll do this. And we are live. Hello there. And thank you for joining me today on the Dr. Elisa Show here on KUHS Denver, the stream. Started my morning by shoveling a foot of snow. It's always funny when I'm out there in the morning shoveling, imagining that really what I'm doing is shoveling water in a different state. This is what you get when you're a geologist. Like, wow, I'm shoveling water. It's so fascinating. So that was my morning workout before I got started. If you're joining me for the first time, thank you for tuning in. As you may know, the tagline for my show is Igniting a Renaissance of Spirit. And what I've started doing on the show is having amazing guests on who have inspired me and ignited something within me, and giving them a chance to talk about their work. And today is just like that. Before I introduce my guest, I want to just remind you that you can find me at elisarobin.com. That's my website. And if you sign up, you get my regular blog posts. And you also can see replays of all the shows there on my website. It's also how you get in touch with me if you want to work with me on building your life in a different way. So I will actually talk about that in the second half of the show today, living on the loose, and that's the work I do with people, and that it's pretty profound and pretty fun work. And I blend of my astrology background, my psychology background, my adventurous spirit, and oh yeah, my art background. So all of that combined to work with people to help them cross those scary bridges that might be just a little frightening when they're all by themselves. But if somebody else has crossed that bridge in front of you and you know it's safe, you know you can do it too. So that's how you get in touch with me, elisarobin.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. You can find me everywhere. Okay, so what I want to do is jump right in, and let me just introduce my guest today. Just a little over a year ago, I was in Santa Monica, California, my old stomping grounds, where I grew up very close to there. And I was at a high school, and there was this leadership conference for young women. There was this amazing speaker, Tara Schuster, and she stood up and engaged this audience that was full of high school girls, their moms, their aunts, like hello, their sisters, just all these women of different ages. And she engaged them in this notion of self-care, of reparenting oneself. And her book is Buy Yourself the Effing Lilies. And I have to tell you, I bought it, I was on my phone buying her book while she was talking. That's how much she inspired me. So Tara, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for those kind words. It's so funny because at that conference, you never know how something's really going and how people are taking the message in. But the fact that you whipped out your phone and bought the book while I was speaking, that's like the ultimate endorsement. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you're listening, I'm going to also tell you that I do have the Facebook site pulled up. And if you'd like to interact, you can do so by going to Facebook, the Dr. Elisa Show, as I mess with technology here, or KUHS Denver. So Tara, what I'd like to start with is your book. Your book is this amazing blend of humor, dealing with really rough topics, and which is, I think, one of the reasons I loved it, and great advice. Can you just start us, because so many of our listeners may not know you, on the book starts, you're about 25, you have the supposed dream job with Comedy Central, right? And you realize you're kind of a mess. And that's kind of where the book starts.
So the book starts with I was great at work, but bad at living. I had grown up in a house where things came to die. A family of deer died in our lap pool. Iggy the iguana died days after we brought him home from Petco. The fig tree died. The grass shriveled. The house was not under a mystery hex. It was neglected. I was neglected by my parents, but I made it out. And, you know, it was sort of like what I looked for was outside validation. Anything that would give me the stamp of approval that I was worthy, because I wasn't getting that at home. So I was always hustling, always doing well in high school, getting into an Ivy League college, and then landing this, kind of dream job on the first step of the entertainment ladder at Comedy Central. And so I'm 25, I've hustled to get where I was, and on the night of my 25th birthday, next morning I wake up on top of my aggressively floral duvet, like adult Laura Ashley style. I've got throw up in my hair. I'm wearing a sequined Forever 21 number, 2 pairs of Spanx. You got a double Spanx. And I look at my voicemail, and I have all these missed calls from my therapist. I'm like, what in the what? Why would she be calling me? And as I listened to her voicemails, I realized that I had drunk dialed her and threatened to hurt myself. And I had always known that there was, quote unquote, something wrong with me. I had been so anxious and depressed for so long, and I knew that couldn't be normal. But it wasn't until I heard the worry in her voice and her alarm and her want to find me, it wasn't until then that I realized, oh, if I keep living this way, I'm not going to have much more of a life to live. So that next morning, I decided, okay, I didn't have the parents that I would have wanted, that would have nurtured me. If I'm going to have parents, I need to be those parents now. What would that look like? What would it look like if I reparented myself? What does that word even mean? And so I started attacking it. I started a Google document where I wrote out all my questions. What are values? What are principles? What are vegetables? Genuinely, what are they, and which ones should be eaten, which should be avoided? And I attacked it for 5 years. I was on a mission to take care of myself. And this was before the term self-care was even a thing. This was not some hashtag. It was a desperate attempt to save my life. And at the end of 5 years, I had a 600-page Google Doc, and I felt like a completely different person. I felt stable, which was shocking. I even felt happy, which I did not think was available for somebody like me. And that's when I realized, oh, I have an offering. I have something to give to people who, they don't have to have gone through a traumatic childhood like mine to get value from the book. And readers from across the world have told me, in France or Ukraine or Bosnia, all these places where the book is published, they've told me from the most perfect childhood in Ohio to a really bad situation in Chicago. I've heard people relate to the book because it's really ultimately about declaring and figuring out how to show our self-worth and show that we are worthwhile to ourselves, because I think we're inundated with messages that we're not worth very much, and that self-help or self-care is just cheesy and unnecessary. But I can tell you there's so many people who have such a deep yearning to be the most themselves that they possibly can be.
That is what I picked up from your book, the idea that it's okay to embrace ourselves. And I have to say that even if we didn't have the kind of childhood you did, I think every one of us heard something like, I remember crying and my dad saying to me, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Okay,
Right.
Really? That's I'm upset and the threat is you're just going to upset me more or something. Or I've been somewhere and a young child will say, I'm hungry, and the parent says, no, you're not.
Right.
Really? That's fascinating. So I agree with you. We don't have to have had an extreme situation to find value in your book, because there's some other experiences like that we've had. Can you talk about in your book, you talk about sort of creating mentors for yourself. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people get hung up on, I need a mentor. You know, like if I'm going to learn how to do this thing, like I need a mentor. And I didn't have any wise adults who were like, come here, kid, get under my wing. I'll show you entertainment. Like that never happens. Instead, I looked to books I loved for mentors. You know, I looked at, Steve Martin has a great memoir called Born Standing Up, where he kind of talks about how he went about his craft. I read that, margin noted the heck out of it, took notes, and tried to implement in my life. Nora Ephron's books have so much advice about how one can live, and she does it with such humor. I was like, oh, okay, I'll be a thief of this. Like, you know, anything I saw that I thought an adult that I admired was doing well, I tried to do myself. And so, you know, I think it's great if you have a mentor who's like teaching you about business or how to be a leader. I never had that, and I basically had to look for it in books. And then as I sort of progressed in my professional career, now I actually feel like I can find mentors more easily. You know, I'm constantly asking the people who are further down the road than me, like, how did you do that, and why, and what was that like? What's it like to be you? What's this experience like? And now I'm really good at kind of seeking out those people. But if you're hung up on not having a mentor like I was at the beginning, they're definitely available to you in book form.
I love that notion because I've done similar things where there are people who seem to live amazing, rich lives, and I don't want to be them, but there's messages from their life that I can take. Katharine Hepburn was always, as I was growing up, this sort of very strong woman. I was told when I was growing up to cut my hair when I got to a certain age, and I was like, well, Katharine Hepburn hasn't. So I think we can embrace mentors in so many ways.
That's great.
What I'd like to dig into is that comment you made about humor, because what I found in your book is this dance of laughter and depression, almost like a type of like holy madness or something that you do in your book. Is that just naturally you? Did humor save you? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'm thrilled to talk about it because I thought a lot about that. I think growing up in a less than ideal situation, you learn to laugh at things that are genuinely unfunny, because what else are you going to do? Your only option is to cry, except what you mentioned is like, you're often told don't cry either. So you end up with a pretty unique sense of humor, I think. And so I was always drawn to comedy. I mean, I worked as vice president of talent development at Comedy Central I was there for 10 years. So I was always like magnetized towards comedy. And as I was writing the book, I wanted to be funny because I think that's one of the best ways to reach an audience, particularly to talk about something so serious, because it takes the humor, gives it levity. So then it's not this depressing, overwhelming thing. You know, if you read my book, it's not like a disaster memoir about a terrible childhood. Like, I think it's, if I do say so myself, I think I can make you laugh about some of these things. But in that way, if you can laugh, then we can really talk about it, because it's not overwhelming, you're not alienated from it. It's a way to invite you into the experience and to also show you I'm okay. Like, I have enough self-awareness and I've healed, thus I can laugh about it. So, you know, because I think there's a danger in using humor with trauma to deflect and to demean yourself through self-deprecating humor, or, you know, it's fine, like, this horrible thing happened, but it's fine. That's definitely a pitfall of using humor in this way, but that's sort of, what I'm trying to do is use humor to invite you in, to laugh about some of these things, because they are pretty absurd too. Like, they're ridiculous. You know, like a family of deer died in your pool is your first memory. That's ridiculous, you know? So I think humor, the kind of lane I'm trying to be in is using humor to talk about mental health in a real way that actually helps people and that isn't us, you know, I think if you're feeling horrible and you just need to sob and weep, great, you know, feel that, be there. I'm not saying to deny any feelings, but with time, I think it's possible to build enough self-awareness that you can kind of laugh at some of these things.
I think that's brilliant. I know in my own life that when I can tell a story with laughter, I know I've healed the situation. So it's so important. Before we go further, if anybody's watching, they can see the book over your right shoulder. So how do they find you? The book, you can buy the book on anywhere they sell books, right? Both on Kindle and in hard copy.
Yeah. So anywhere books are sold, Target, Amazon, everywhere.
How else do people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. I'm Tara Schuster on Instagram. And then if you go to my website, taraschuster.com, I have a newsletter you can sign up for. And on the newsletter, it's just become this beautiful community of readers who want self-care and they want to heal and they also want to talk about the Real Housewives. It's a great mix of like fun and also, but let's be serious about our mental health, everybody. Right. So if you join the newsletter, I send you one not so cheesy, you'll throw up in your mouth self-care tip every week, and then we all talk. Like it's kind of one of the blessings of the book is that this whole community has kind of sprung up, and I'm like thrilled to be a part of it.
I've been on the site and it seems to be a community of people who do not judge each other. And, right? And
that's the most magical.
I think what you're teaching people to do is not judge themselves, right? Which is just beautiful. So I want to see if you can just share a couple stories because the stories are wonderful. One of the ones I love is about the coffee pot and the lesson of the coffee pot. Can you share that story with us?
Yeah, so my first job in entertainment was I was an intern at The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And so, you know, at the time, that was my favorite show on TV, landed this dream internship. Mm-hmm. And as a part of the internship, you got a chance to sit down with Jon, although I do not know him by Jon. I just want to be very clear, I don't know him on a first name basis. So we sat down with Mr. Stewart, and we're all allowed to ask him one question. And one of the other interns asked, how did you get your first big break? And Jon really quickly said, there are no big breaks, just a series of small little breaks. Your job is to work your hardest and best at each one. And that hit me like a lightning bolt to the heart. I realized, oh, like I shouldn't be looking for like some big goal. Where can I add value today? Like what around me? Like I know I'm in the right environment. What around me can I do? And the context was, you know, all these interns mostly were like being boisterous and loud in a misguided attempt to like get the attention of the executive producers. It was almost like they were auditioning to be on the show or something. And I noticed how annoying that was to all of the adults. So I thought, okay, I'm not trying to be a comedian. I'm definitely not hiring me as a writer tomorrow. So how can I add value? And I noticed that the coffee machine that Jon used to make coffee before he went on air was often dirty, out of water, had an ominous red light blinking. The thing was a mess. And I was like, aha, my first little break. I am going to be the master of this coffee machine. So every day I worked like heck, you know, making sure that the pump worked, that it was full of water, that it was clean, that there were capsules like stocked and ready to go, his favorite coffee. I bought a similar model and kept it at home and learned how to actually fix the machine. I became the master of that machine, and by the end of my internship, sure enough, I had gotten the attention of the executive producers because I was the person who could be relied upon to fix the most important piece of equipment in any creative space, which is, of course, the coffee machine.
Of course, obviously.
Obviously. And so that's what I say to young people now who ask me for advice about breaking into Hollywood. It's be the best at the worst. You know, don't get hung up on how far you have to go. what can you do literally today to move you closer to what you're aiming for? And how can you add value to the community you're within? Because that will get people's attention a lot more than doing bits and being like flashy or showy. You know, it's this sense of what can you add to the people that are around you.
So I do want to ask you about one more story, but before that, I just want to comment on, if you see yourself as this lovely bridge that you reach forward to have people help mentor you, and you're reaching back and mentoring people, and that perhaps that's one of the strengths of the community you're building, is that you are one of those bridge people, right, that can see in both directions. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to talk about it. You know, I feel like I love being a part of this community and helping where I can. When I pitched the book, when I took it around to different publishers, the only goal I had for it was to make other people feel less alone. That is in the pitch document. That is what I wanted. That is how I knew the book would be successful. Like, not if it was a bestseller or not, but does it make other people feel less alone? Because, you know, getting back to what we're talking about with mentors, the books of Cheryl Strayed, Nora Ephron, David Sedaris, those made me feel less alone. I never met those people, but they changed my life. And I thought, if I can make other people feel less alone, if I can pay this forward, that would be a great thing I could bring. And so now I kind of see my role as just being honest and here for anybody who wants a little advice on this road, and maybe not even advice, just company. Like, if you want company on how do you lead a life full of gratitude for the fact that you're here at all, and really enjoying it, because that was what was missing for me. I thought my life was a series of crises to endure. That's what my childhood taught me, was make it through one panicked moment to the next. And it wasn't until I reparented myself that I realized, no, wait, we're not here to get through our lives. We're here to enjoy our lives. Like, if you're getting through your day, something is messed up with how you've set up your day. This isn't something to struggle through. And I think that message is really resonating with readers, because there is so much struggle, and we do have lives that seem to be set up to burn us out, to just like wring out every last drop of productivity out of us. And I'm here to say, there's another way, actually. It doesn't have to be like that.
Right, I can tell you've changed from that, because I've talked about this often on the show, where we seem to idolize people now, or are rewarded at work for sleeping less, working more, always being exhausted, drinking too much coffee, as if that means we're doing good work. And one of the things I love when I watch you on Instagram, especially because I know where you are, because that's my stomping grounds, right, is that you're running on the beach. Right, that you're being in nature. You're giving yourself time to recharge. And I think that's wonderful. I do want to ask you if you could talk about, because I just loved the story. You talked about your writing desk in the book, and I loved that, partly because it felt to me like the desk gave you a safe place to write and let you acknowledge that you were a writer. But can you just talk about your experience with your desk a little bit?
Yeah, that's great. I haven't been asked about my desk, so I'm thrilled to talk about it. So I received a desk in college, like a little writing desk. And what's funny is I was living in New York, and I was living with somebody that it was a bad idea, and I had this desk, and it was time to move out. And I just thought, I was so down on myself and miserable about life. Like, this is around when I was 25. I thought, whatever, I'll leave the desk here with him. Who cares? I'm not a writer anyway. I'm moving on. And that decision stuck like a thorn in my side, because I was essentially giving up on myself in a really physical way. You know, you definitely can't be a writer if you don't have a place to write. Like, Want to write? Well, have a clean work surface where you can write. Yeah, like literally have a printer. You know, there's some very basic things to being a writer. And so I would think about this desk and how much I wanted it back, but I didn't want to call my ex. And randomly, like this really happened, I had a dream where the desk cried out to me and collapsed and like missed me. And the very next morning, my ex-boyfriend's parents called and they said, hey, this weird thing happened. Your desk fell apart. It kind of like collapsed in on itself, but we'll rebuild it for you and bring it to you if you want. And I was like, hallelujah. Thank you, universe. Please do bring me my desk. And I'm like not the kind of person to use the word universe earnestly. Like I'm like, for all of my self-care, I'm not a terribly like woo-woo person, although I'm becoming more and more so. But I really felt like my desk was saying, hey, take yourself seriously. If you have a dream to write, then the minimum requirement is to have a place to write. And so my desk now I've taken with me through multiple apartments in New York, through multiple apartments in LA. And my vow to myself is I always have to have a place to write because I'm never giving up on myself again. So even if, you know, in the times before the pandemic, when I was an executive and going to hotels across the country, you know, shooting different shows, I always called ahead to make sure that my room had a desk. I owe any Airbnb I stay in, any hotel on vacation, I always check ahead of time, does it have a desk? Does it have a chair I could actually sit in? Because I take myself and my dream very seriously. I don't take myself so seriously I can't laugh at myself, but I also always make sure that I'm set up to do the things I actually want to do. And I think, you know, for anybody who's pursuing anything creative, you know, whether it's you're starting your Etsy beef jerky company or your candle company or your finance, whatever it is, have you made room in your life for the thing to exist? Because if you haven't, it's really hard for something to exist if there's just literally no space for it. So what I write in the book is take up space. Make sure you've set yourself up so that your dream even has a place to live. And I know that can be difficult, you know, in a small house, lots of kids. Do you have a box that's just yours where you can like keep your things together that matter to you? What about a closet? It's really important to make a physical manifestation of the thing we're working towards. And for me, that's my desk. And what's interesting is I'm about to move again, and I think I'm going to use a dining room table as a desk because I've now realized I need even more space. Like I really, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm a single person in a pandemic. I'm getting a 2-bedroom apartment because I need that office. Like I need my space to do the thing I love to do, which is to write.
I have so much respect for you for doing that. The last house I bought, the house I live in, I walked into the house and there was a loft where my office could be, and that has been my dream forever, to have my office
I
in a
love
loft.
that.
And I knew I was going to be changing careers. I was an academic dean. I was going to go more now into consulting and writing and being an author. And I knew I needed the loft. I bought the house because it had a loft with a good view. Rest of the house, I didn't even care. It was good.
I totally relate. Like I just looked at 70 different apartments in Los Angeles.
Wow.
For I wanted to be able to look at trees while I write my next book.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else was sort of like whatever, but like, did I have a view? Did I have enough sunlight? We don't have a lot of practice taking ourselves seriously. You know, like the gut reaction to I looked at 70 apartments because I needed to find a view of trees is, you're ridiculous. That's silly. That's too much. Why? That's not ridiculous at all. What's ridiculous is to have a desire, to know it in your guts, to really feel it, and to ignore it. That is ridiculous, and that is not something I'm interested in doing again.
That's a very powerful statement, and I very much agree with it. I know today you have limited time, and so I'm just going to ask you a wrap question.
Yeah, please.
I definitely appreciate you being on. What still ignites that spark within you? So, you know, you've left the job, you're doing consulting, you're doing workshops, you've got a book. what still ignites you?
It's such a good question. I think writing. Like, I think the thing I'm coming to more and more is I feel the most in flow and the most excited when I have a new idea that I want to write about. I would say also that I hate writing, and I don't trust writers who love writing. I'm like, really? You love sitting there for hours on end, driving yourself insane? Like, I don't know about that. But the process of writing, the process of thinking through things and, ooh, how can I say that? And like, what would delight a reader? And it also, my writing follows my curiosity, like what, and I'm an extremely curious person. So I think it's like a combination of my curiosity to know more, to know how other people live, to know what it's like to be in another human's footsteps with the flow of writing. It's like curiosity and writing. Those two things really ignite me.
I think that's a place we resonate together, because I just talk about it as I just get bored easily and I need to explore something else. And then that act of writing for me can be sort of mystical and magical and also traumatic, and all combined together. So as I said, I know you have a short time with us. Let me just, before I lose you again, the book is Buy Yourself the Effing Lilies. You can find it on Kindle version, but you just launched it as a hardback. Is that correct?
As a paperback.
As a paperback.
So it came out as a hardcover last year, and it just came out as a paperback.
Okay, so it's that sort of a relaunch of the book. You're writing another book. You do consulting if somebody wants to find you, and you talk about self-care with big companies. Is that what you do?
So I'm a speaker. So I come to companies and talk about, I'm doing a self-care boot camp actually for a company in Denver, or an association in Denver tonight. But I love connecting particularly with like corporate audiences, where I think there's, particularly in the pandemic, more and more of an emphasis on mental health. And I really like connecting with those audiences because I'm very practical about how we go about our mental health, and I really like to give people those tools. So, in a best case scenario, it's a helpful, hopeful, funny talk about your own self-care.
Which is, I think, the other unique aspect of your book. It's funny, it's real, and there's rituals and tools in there that are completely accessible to, maybe not every single one to everybody, but all of them to people. And so that's wonderful. Any last message you'd like to leave us with? Because I know you need to run.
No, I'm just so grateful to be here with you today, and I love these questions, and I'm, even though I'm isolated in a pandemic, it's really beautiful to get to be here with you right now.
Wonderful. And I know you and I will be in touch after this.
Yes.
Do some other chatting. So thank you, for being on, and the best of luck today. Good thing you didn't have to fly into Denver, since we did have a foot of snow.
Yes, yes. Although I hope to come one day soon.
And you will come visit me and stay with me when you do.
Yes, I would love that.
All right.
Thank you again for having me.
Okay, absolutely.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so that was Tara Schuster on the show. And if you just tuned in, you missed Tara Schuster. But she is the author of Buy Yourself the Effing Lilies, and is, as you can tell, just this amazing person. Wonderful book, enlightening, funny, and practical all at the same time. You are listening to the Dr. Elisa Show here on KUHS Denver, the stream. And for the second half of the show, you get me. So I just wanted to move us in a slightly different direction, though I'm going to tag off of a few things she said. I loved her notion of using books as mentors, and I wonder how many of you have done that. Have a favorite book where you find guidance and meaning, and it doesn't even have to be a self-help book. It definitely doesn't have to be a non-fiction book. It simply can be a book, something you enjoyed. One of my favorite books through my whole life is Alice in Wonderland, and you wouldn't think that that gave me maybe some sort of guidance as a mentor, but it allowed me to be playful with my imagination. But the book I want to talk about, and that I'm going to talk about a few times in the future, and it's where my work is now going, is a book that I wish I had brought with me, I'm sorry, called On the Loose. Old book, I think you can only get it on, I don't know, get used copies of it. And it's a book that I discovered back, I think, in graduate school when I was hiking, backpacking. And it's a book about chronicling adventures. It's a series of pictures, photographs, a few quotes, a poem or two, tons and tons of blank space in there. And it's a chronicle of a journey. And I didn't know why it haunted me so badly. And in fact, I've showed it to friends, and they've been, well, that's nice. But I've taken it on every backpack trip, every hiking trip. It's a well-traveled book, let's just say that. And I think I finally found the peace for me. And it is that there's a way to live on the loose. I don't mean on the loose dangerously. I don't mean quit your job, the money will show up. I don't mean just dream your life into being. I don't mean that. Living on the loose for me is about following your own instincts. And at times, you might be living on the loose in a corporate job. You might not have invented the job where you can wander everywhere and still pay your bills. But your soul, your spirit, is on the loose. That you're in a job or in a career or in a life situation, still knowing that you're a beautiful spirit and that you're a bit of a wild spirit and that you can follow and find and follow your soul's craving. Again, this isn't about quitting a job. And it's also not about being sort of narcissistic about it. I'm always right. It's not about that. It's about knowing that each of us came here with gifts, with a soul's gift, and that living those gifts on this planet, that's our job. I'm often asked by clients, I feel like I need to find my passion. Well, you know what? Our passions change as we grow and develop. Sometimes I'm asked, well, how do I know what my life purpose is? Well, if you're living in alignment with your soul's craving, you're living in a way on the loose, and that is your life purpose. So let me just talk to you about that for a bit. How do we find that? Where is that? And how I have found that, and then how I help people. And again, if you just tuned in, it's the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHS Denver, the stream, and you can find me at elisarobin.com. Robin is spelled with a Y. It's a little tricky. Elisa Robin is also my tag on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can find me everywhere. And the Dr. Elisa Show on Facebook. Oh, yeah, and Elisa Robin on Facebook. So I've talked to you before about the way I blend astrology and psychology, that is something that I've realized is an ongoing, I'm not going to quite call it a craving, but a way that I blend the aspects of my life. If you've tuned in before, you know I have a bachelor and a master's in geology, because I love rocks and crystals and minerals, and I love the planet. And then a PhD in ed psych. Oh, and then I ran an art school. Oh, and then a second master's in Jewish spirituality. That my interests are broad, more of a, what could be called a Renaissance mind. I am not one of those people who can find the one thing and follow it forever. If you're like me, you get bored, perhaps. And that one thing has to be broad enough. Perhaps your one thing is adventure or exploration, mental exploration, emotional exploration, spiritual exploration. You can stay home and be an explorer, be an adventurer. And during COVID, I think that's the way most of us are doing it. What I do then for people is I look in their chart, and we're gonna do a little astrology in a moment after I get through this, because this is like the taste of it. This is just the basic intro. I look at a person, the nodes of a moon. So the nodes of a moon in a chart. The Earth is going around the sun, the moon is going around the Earth, and sorry, flat Earth people, this is not how this works. Twice a day, when the moon goes around the Earth, it crosses the Earth's orbit around the sun. And those points are called the nodes of the moon. If you run a chart, we can find them on a chart. The Kabbalists looked at those as the message of what your soul came here craving, what your past life was, or what perhaps the epigenetics of what you came here born with, the trauma or the unresolved karma from the past, and then what your soul now craved. What I started to realize was that when we follow that craving, that north node energy, we are starting to live on the loose. So what does that mean? You know, there was a time where you took a job, you either didn't go to college and you had a great job, or you went to college and had a job, and you stayed there for 30 or 35 or 40 years, maybe barely changing what you did in all that time, and those days are gone. Now some of us start working before we get out of school, and we work our way through school, and then we get our first career, and then we get our second career. And for many people, there might be 7 careers in their life or more, for many, many different reasons. Some of us leave a career because we realize it no longer resonates with who we are. And sometimes the place realizes we don't resonate with them. It can be a very mutual experience. And what we do when we are successful in that experience, and successful just meaning that we got back up, is we understand that reinvention is a process of development, that we become true adults and we go through the developmental stages of life by consciously interacting with life, consciously choosing life, consciously choosing to embrace situations as challenges, as a call to action. And in fact, when we look at an astrological chart, if it's full of squares, planets that are at right angles to each other, those are a call to action. They're not something there to block you. There's something there to enliven us, to ignite us. Remember my tag, igniting a renaissance of spirit? That's why I find this work so deeply satisfying. So what I'm now doing is working with people on helping them chronicle their life forward, reinvent themselves in the process by being present. Often we write a chronicle about where we've been. So this isn't a scrapbook about the past or a journal about your day. It's also not actually a vision board about the future you want. A chronicle is about the ups and the downs, and the places I tripped, and the places I rose, and a poem that captures me, a quote that I heard, a quote I heard myself say. It's a chronicle. It's not a dream, it's not a vision. It's not a scrapbook, it's not the past. It is the exploration of the present as I'm going forward. And I found myself helping people do that more and more, using this blend of psychology, astrology, and I have to say, maybe some hero's journey, and just the knowledge that this is what I'm good at. I'm very good at being that person, as I said, that crosses the rickety bridge in front of someone and says, it's safe. Come on, it's safe. You can do this. There's a Jewish saying that the world is a very narrow bridge, and your goal is to just not be afraid. And often that's what I do. I can help people. You might still be afraid, but you can cross the bridge. And the work I'm doing now is helping people do that. So I call it Life on the Loose, and it's putting together these different elements of psychology, astrology, building a chronicle, just so it's sort of a package deal of helping people with reinvention and transformation. Much like what Tara Schuster talked about, the reparenting, it's the reinventing. It's understanding that we always are in a developmental stage, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, at whatever age we are. In fact, I am on a board at a senior residency, a senior nursing facility, and we see our elders, as in another developmental stage with still so much to share. One of my clients the other day asked me when it was too late to try something new, and I hope you're not offended, but my answer was, well, when you're dead. It's a little hard to try then, but until that moment, you can still embrace a new thought, a new way of thinking, a new way of being in the world. So, that's my work that I'm doing. Where I want to add to that today, actually I'm going to just check the Facebook site and see if perhaps you have any comments, any questions. If you'd like to participate in this conversation with me, you can go to the Dr. Elisa Show on Facebook. We're streaming live, and should technology work, which I'm not positive about, I will be able to see your comments. And I seem to not be able to do that. Okay, there. There we go. I can see your comments if you're interested in talking with me. On that Facebook site, Dr. Elisa Show, I now can actually see comments, which is wonderful. Polly, living with intention. Yes, that's it. It's living with intention. That is a developmental piece. I actually heard somebody talking about, can we become adult by just living our lives? And the answer was no. We might go to college and get older and have children and have lives and have mortgages, but do we become ourself? As Tara Schuster talked about, do we become our true self? The self we were born to be. And I believe we have to live with intention to do that. On the loose. Not just following rules, just not following other people's guidelines. One of the books, and again, she talked about mentors, one of the books that I have found incredible in my life, there's a few of them, but one is just anything by Joseph Campbell. And he talked about the hero's journey, the heroine's journey, as a way that we have to walk into the woods where there is no path. Because if we follow somebody else's path, we are not on our own journey. So it's fascinating, isn't it? That a mentor actually helps you find your own path. A mentor doesn't say, do what I did. A mentor is someone who helps you say, wow, what is my direction? Where is my journey going to take me? And so, Polly, yes, I think that is living with intention. Another book that moved me so much, and I've talked about it before, was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which is a horrifying book and a liberating book simultaneously, where we realize that so much of what is happening to us we don't have control over, but we have ultimate control over how we respond. And I think if nothing else, 2020 taught us that. I had no control over the virus. I had no control over what was happening in grocery stores or in my state or where I could go or not go. I had absolute positive control over my daily attitude, over my daily behaviors. Again, a book that turns into a mentor. In a way that I've noticed, I forge a path before me. Occasionally, I might find someone on that path or a parallel path, and maybe we walk together for a while. And I'm not talking about love relationships. I'm talking about developmental, about on the loose, meaning that I listen to that soul's craving and that I reinvent myself. If you've been fired, if you've been laid off, and I've had both of those at least once in each, right? If you've left a job because you knew you had to leave and didn't know what to do next, and I've done that twice, maybe 3 times. It takes a lot of courage, it takes some chutzpah, and I have to say I was born with quite a bit of chutzpah, so that's a good thing. But it also takes vulnerability, it takes intention, it takes emotional awareness, and it takes a bit of joy. Because there is some joy in having a life journey, in having an experience that when you look back, you can say, wow, that was what I wanted to do. And I'm not done. There's more in front of me. And I think it is that living completely that some of what Tara Schuster is aiming for in her book and what she's helping people do, and then also some of the other amazing people I've had on the show, and some of the people that will be coming up. Just so you know, and I've just got about 5 minutes, in June I have Jeff Walker on the show, which will be amazing. In 2 weeks I have Allie Hill on the show, who's going to help us talk about what do you have to do if you want to start your own businesses. And one of the things I'm hoping to do in the next few shows is inspire people to maybe reinvent themselves and not feel so trapped. To, sure, keep your day job, but maybe have a side gig. Yeah, I know you've been single for a while. Think about if you're happy with that, and what does it mean to be in a relationship that fills you, and how might that be different than the relationships you've had before. Yeah, I know spiritual woo isn't your thing, until maybe it is. How do you now let go of the assumptions that you lived with for the last many years? And in fact, and I've talked about this a great deal, we've had 3 major planets, Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter in Capricorn. And Saturn and Jupiter have now moved into Aquarius. And those 2 planets moving into Aquarius are asking each of us a question. They're asking us to creatively explore or suspiciously examine the ways that we have believed things that maybe are not true for us. The ways that we have embraced a life that isn't part of our DNA, is not actually who we want to be, which is an interesting notion, isn't it? When we look at your chart, and I didn't have this plan today, so I've done it before. If you go through your chart and see where Aquarius is in your chart, and this is why you usually need an astrologer, because astrology is so much more than just your sun sign. If you go around and see where Aquarius is in your chart, that is where you need to look deeply, explore deeply, question deeply. And 2021 is the year that all of us need to do that. So think about it. So many of us have beliefs because we grew up in a household with those beliefs. We're liberal because our families were liberal. We're conservative because families were conservative. We're in this religion because I was raised in this religion. Or I embraced the first religion I saw because I was told they were all bad, or just get one, or right? Where did we do something because it fit in with the group around us? Where did we embrace a way of thinking because it's the only thing we heard, and we only listened to one news channel, or read one type of book, or had one type of friend, or went to one school where everybody was sort of homogeneous? That's what this year is about. And to live on the loose, we absolutely have to be able to embrace openness, a pathway into the forest that we didn't know was there, a craving from our heart that we have been ignoring. It's an interesting challenge, and one that I'm going to talk about a great deal more on the show around other guests. The next few weeks, as I said, I have some amazing guests coming on. In 2 weeks, Allie Hill, as I said, and then a series of other guests who are going to talk about their own way of living on the loose, how they have done that, how that ignites a renaissance of spirit within them, and how they ignite that renaissance of spirit in others. Okay, well, thank you for those of you who are listening. Believe it or not, I've come to the end of a show. Again, I do hope you enjoyed Tara Schuster. She is amazing, isn't she? I also want to tell you that if you're buying books, to check out mine, The Way of the Well, which you know you can buy, which is a romantic spiritual adventure. It's the book that my first novel, and you can find it on Amazon in lots of different ways. And please go to my website. The first chapter of my second book is there, and I'm hopefully at some point I'll get through the publication process and let you know when that is. But Dark Fire, you can read the first chapter, and if you read it and send me a message about liking it, about the book itself, then I will send you the second chapter. And absolutely, you can reach out to me, and I can help you live on the loose. This is the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHS Denver, The Stream, saying goodbye to you. So please, stay well, and most importantly, stay inspired.